Ich bin Christian Wenzel, dein Mr. Broccoli, und in dieser Vegan Podcast Episode hörst du.
I did an hour and a half presentation on the latest science on the real truth about health, and it's called Inside Is You. And what I described there is one of the other absolute proofs that Homo sapiens, human beings, were meant to eat plant foods, because what we know clearly now, that 80% of your immune system comes from healthy bacteria in the gut.
Willkommen im Vegan Podcast, präsentiert von Mr. Broccoli. Bei uns tauchst du tief ein in die Welt der pflanzlichen Ernährung, entdeckst die neuesten Fitnesstrends, erkundest die Geheimnisse der Langlebigkeit und berührst die Tiefe der Spiritualität. Wir bieten dir eine einzigartige Perspektive auf aktuelle Themen, unvoreingenommen und stets am Puls der Zeit. Und nun viel Spaß mit der neuesten Episode.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen im Vegan Podcast. Heute wieder mit einer Special-Episode, und diese Episode ist in Englisch mit einem meiner Mentoren, Dr. Brian Clement aus dem Hippocrates Center in Florida. Seit über 35 Jahren ist er der Direktor dieses Institutes, die schon über 500.000 Menschen mit ganz natürlicher Ernährung, ganz natürlichen Behandlungsmethoden und vielem mehr geholfen haben, wieder in ihre Gesundheit zu kommen. Superstars kommen dorthin, Menschen mit Krebs kommen dorthin, Menschen, die einfach wieder in ihre Stärke wollen, kommen dorthin. Und ich darf heute Dr. Brian Clement 30 Minuten befragen zu aktuellen Hot Topics. Wir reden über Pestizide, Herbizide in Gemüsen, vor allem aber auch reden wir über Apil. Das ist eine neue Schutzschicht für Gemüse. Das erscheint mir ein bisschen tragisch, seine Meinung dazu, und wie wir uns ganz natürlich und mit einem schonenden Geldbeutel ernähren können. So. Should I, in your opinion, should I go anything for non-organic? So I go to a normal supermarket and I see grapes there.
Never.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to remember that besides the herbicides, the pesticides, the fungicides, even in Europe, where they claimed, your governments claimed to ban genetic modification, they are not. Because you're importing these into Europe from countries that have not done that. The meats, for instance, you banned meats in many countries from the United States. South American meats you didn't ban. They use the same process that we do with genetic modified feeding. But let's go back to the vegetables. There are three categories. When you live in a warm climate, like Florida or Spain or Africa, you consider mostly greens. So you get bioland, ecological, biological greens, and they do have them. Now, remember, what you're buying in Germany in the middle of winter most likely was picked 2, 3, 4 weeks earlier in Spain or even Africa. So they have very little life, but as you pointed out, to make it interesting, last year here at the Institute, we spent $2.5 million to give vegetables, organic vegetables, to the guests. Would it have been better for me just to feed sprouts to them? Sure, economically and health-wise, but nobody's going to do that. So you focus on the greens. When you're in a colder climate, and you're in a moderate climate, but how about Scandinavia? How about Finland? How about Norway? Then you're going to have to add maybe 30% from about November until about April of root vegetables that are raw. And this fills you up, and it actually lowers your energy field. Because I perceive nutrition in this food is by the top protein, the top vitamins, the top minerals. But more important to me is the energy field, because we are energetic beings. We are conscious beings. Our mind governs everything. All healing comes from the mind. What we have done here is tell people the fuel to get the mind to function clearly and well, so that you can heal yourself and live a productive lifestyle, has to be living. So what kind of root vegetables? What you like, beetroot and carrot? No, too much sugar. So the non-sugary ones. So your grandma would have known this, turnips, rutabaga, things of this nature. These are part of the cabbage family, and they have anti-cancer. You know, you're called Mr. Broccoli. These are anti-cancer foods. Many of the southern, Spanish root vegetables. Yucca, as an example, amazingly good. And you buy these nice little inexpensive machines that grind them up into spaghetti, so they're easy to eat. You can mush them up, you can ferment them. They're delicious, just like we do in Germany with cabbage. We can do this same thing by putting the juice of cabbage in and let these soak for a day or two. So these are wonderful foods for you. So again, here would be a lot of greens, a lot of light, juicy stuff. There, a good percentage for several months during the winter there, until spring, should be also root vegetables to fill yourself up. Then nuts and seeds and grains and beans. They can be eaten in all climates. But what I've noticed is when I lived in the cold climates, like in Germany and Boston, I wanted heavier nuts. So what you call hazelnuts in Germany, they grow there. I wanted hazelnuts. I don't really want hazelnuts very often here. And what I do is I'm traveling all over the world to lecture, and maybe I see them, then I'll eat a hazelnut. But here I want pine nuts, things that would pretty much be grown in a suitable climate. They grow them in Greece, as an example, and southern Spain and Portugal. So these are the alterations with it. But remember, even these biological foods, the bioland foods, are not the most nutritious foods, barring seeds, nuts, and grains and beans, because seeds, nuts, grains, and beans can be sprouted, soaked and sprouted. Then they become, remember this, 8 times more nutrition. So 8 times more vitamin A, 8 times more vitamin B, 8 times more vitamin C, and become 17 to 57 times more digestible.
Super cool, was er da erzählt hat. Er sagt eben, es gibt 3 Kategorien an Essen, die wir quasi von den restlichen 5% aus dem Supermarkt essen sollten. Und zwar sind es 3 Kategorien, je nach Klimazone, wo du wohnst. Das ist die warme Klimazone, die kältere Klimazone oder die moderate Klimazone. In den warmen Klimazonen, die auch das ganze Jahr relativ warm sind, da solltest du auf jeden Fall bedenken, das meiste Zeit vom Jahr grün zu essen, also all die biologischen grünen Sachen, ne? Die grünen Lebensmittel. Und in den kälteren Klimazonen, vor allem in den Wintermonaten, dann eben auch sehr viel Wurzelgemüse mit reinnehmen. Nicht Karotten, nicht rote Beete und so weiter, weil die zu zuckerhaltig sind und zu stärkehaltig, sondern eher diejenigen, zum Beispiel ja Kornwurzeln, Süßkartoffeln und all diese Sachen. Denn die füllen uns ab, die geben uns Wärme, aber man muss bedenken, dass sie eben auch ein bisschen unser Energiefeld runterziehen. Und wenn man weiß, dass alle Heilung über unsere Gedanken kommen, über unseren Kopf kommen, über unseren Geist kommen, dann darf man da eben schauen, dass man, ja, übersetzt gesagt, in ein warmes Klima kommt und dort sich hauptsächlich von diesen sehr nährstoffreichen, sauerstoffreichen, vitaminstoffreichen grünen Sachen ernährt. Und Nuts and Seeds, also Nüsse und Samen, die, wenn sie eingeweicht sind und oder gesprossen sind, sind 8-fach so wertvoll, 8-fach mehr Nährstoffe drin, 8-fach mehr Vitamine drin und bis zu x-fach, also über 10, 20, 30-fach besser verdaubar.
Good translation. Good translation. You remembered it all.
And he understands also.
Some of it. That's most of it.
It's always the same. So I just recently interviewed another doctor, which is really a good one in alternative health, and he visited a lot of shamans all over the world, lived with them, and so on. And he comes up with that, what's the English word right now? Ballaststoffe. You know the. Let me Google that up. Just a minute that I have that right. Fiber.
Oh yes.
He said it's very important to eat 80, 90, 100 gram fiber per day So, but if you only eat the vegetables, like not like seeds and nuts a lot, then you don't have that much fiber, right? So, how important is fiber, especially for our gut and all of that stuff?
Well, I did an 1.5-hour presentation on the latest science about a year ago on the real truth about health, and it's called Inside Is You. And what I described there is one of the other absolute proofs that Homo sapiens, human beings, were meant to eat plant foods. Because what we know clearly now, this is not my opinion, this is what they're teaching at the great medical universities in the world now, that 80% of your immune system comes from healthy bacteria in the gut, but 90% of your psychology / consciousness comes from healthy bacteria in the gut. What the fuel is, listen closely, people, and challenge me. I'd love you to challenge me, especially you meatheads out there. What the fuel is fiber. So the inherent natural food that cultures, that grows, that develops healthy bacteria, they eat the cellulose. That's what it is. They eat the cellulose. When you put an animal carcass in, or the milk, it ferments it and creates unhealthy bacteria. So this is why we see in cultures that eat larger amounts of animal-based food, there's more violence, more murder, more rape, more anger, more hostility. And in plant-based communities, they compared, for instance, the Indians who eat an okay diet, but of course it includes dairy, versus the Chinese who eat both of these cultures eat a much better diet than Germans and Americans. But they saw that the most important bacteria, you have 3 families of bacteria that make up your gut. The most important bacteria was double as good in the Indians because the Chinese ate meat. Now, can you imagine this? How do you don't deny these studies? I mean, you can't deny these studies. So what I'm saying clearly is this doctor is correct that what you need is healthy, plant-based, organic fiber, which is cellulose, to feed your immune system and your mind. And that's your consciousness, people. So people that say just sit and om and pray and become conscious without including diet, they've missed a big part of the puzzle. You can't just think yourself into health. You've got to act yourself into health too. You need all of it as far as I'm concerned.
Schön gesagt und kurz in Deutsch zusammengefasst ist, dass nicht nur unser körperliches Bewusstsein, unsere körperliche Gesundheit, sondern natürlich auch unsere geistig-seelische Gesundheit einfach davon abhängt, wie unsere Bakterien im Darm sind, und 80% der körperlichen Gesundheit unseres Immunsystems kommt von den Bakterien im Darm, natürlich von den guten, sofern die in der Überzahl sind, und sogar 90%, sagt er, kommt von der geistigen Gesundheit von den Bakterien im Darm. Also Sprichwort Hormone, ja, also die ausgeschüttet werden, die dann gesteuert werden über die Bakterien und vieles mehr. Und die Basis ist natürlich da auch wieder eine pflanzenbasierte, biologische Ernährung aus Gemüse, die natürlich sehr stark an Ballaststoffen ist. Und da gibt es dann eben sehr viele Studien, die dann zum Beispiel die Inder und die Chinesen vergleichen und so weiter, und dann eben auch festgestellt haben, dass diejenigen, die weniger Dairy, also weniger Milch, weniger Tierprodukte in der Ernährung haben, dann eben auch ganz klar gesünder sind. Und wichtig nochmal, alle Heilung kommt von unserem Geisteszustand. So, which brings me up to one of the last questions to really consider your time, Dr. Brian Clement. There is a lot of science also, and I know you are really a fan of about fasting. So I know you fast one day each week since a lot of years. 2 days
2
right
days.
now. Okay, 2 days. So you see the everything is rising up. So but there are also, like, a girlfriend of mine, she's doing easily, let's say, 7, 10, 14 days on a water fast, and she's really happy. She's really happy. So what's your, I mean, this is maybe pro stuff right now. But what's your opinion? Do we really need food? And how many food do we need? Because I think, or when I experience her and a lot of other guys as well who are doing fasting on a regular basis, also long time fasting, they seems to be much more clearly, much more in their mind, much more they self, not like all the other guys who are sick once in a year maybe, or but you know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, I mean, you have to remember, we have to include natural history, which most health authorities do not. And natural history is the majority of time we've been on this earth, we were nomadic. And so our human bodies evolved, our organs evolved, our digestive system evolved around not eating much. So remember, most of the time we were here, we were walking from place to place, following the sun. So if you were in Europe, this time of the year, if you were a good swimmer, you'd be in Morocco. If not, you'd be in southern Portugal or southern Spain, and you'd hang out there till March. And now you turn north, and somewhere around July, you'd be in Lapland in Finland or Norway. And we ate when we were hungry, not because we were told by some expert we needed breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We don't need that much food. And what's ironic, I noticed when I was in my 60s, my body started to say, stop eating stupid. So since my 60s, I've been eating one meal a day. Sometimes on weekends, I'll have two to socialize. But the fact is, I fast 2 days a week. That's more than 100 days a year. I eat one meal a day. I drink about 4 liters of fluid a day. Much of that is raw green juice, etc. And I flourish. Now, that's not because I'm a special, extra smart guy. It's because I'm living like my greatest ancestors did. And your girlfriend, who's fasting too, is giving the body a relief from using energy to digest food to raise consciousness. That's why the mental clarity comes. Now, there has to be a fine line. This is a dance, remember. For people that tell me there was a lot of people running around in this field 30 years ago saying they were breatharians. Well, I caught them eating at times. So that was a dishonest fact. Now, is that possible? Sure, I think anything's possible. I think people could walk on water in the future. And I mean that. But the fact is, at this moment, I don't see that as being real. But what I do see is we overeat. And we have to have enough nutrition in our body. And you have to be youthful, most likely like the young lady is, to have the reserve, the resilience. If I went out and made a blanket statement that everyone should fast on water, as an example, I'd hurt a lot of people, because the masses in Europe and here in the developed world are malnourished. So I take away all nourishment from people, they're going to be more vulnerable for disease and premature aging. So this is a very delicate dance, but I don't think you can be healthy without fasting as part of it. Now, preface this, there's anorexics and bulimics listening to us. I'm not telling you you have a license to hurt yourself, that you have to be sound and stable and all of these things. And it's been part of our program here since 1956. And it was only about, 10 years ago, I started 2 days a week. I've been fasting since 1971, 1 day a week. I haven't missed that in 40 years. One time 40 years ago, I missed it. I'll never do it again. And it's just as important for my well-being, biological and psychological and spiritual well-being, as is eating living plant-based foods.
Okay, also er sagt, dass natürlich eine feine Linie ist zwischen dem Fasten, vor allem den langen Fastenzeiten und dem Essen. Fakt ist, dass wir in der Regel über voll sind mit Essen, sprich auf der Kalorienebene, aber was die Nährstoffe angeht, sind wir meistens unten drunter, also unterernährt. Und da geht es eben darum, dass wir natürlich eben zuschauen, dass wir die Nährstoffe bekommen, aber auch nicht zu viel essen, denn unsere Vorfahren oder die meiste Zeit, die wir als Menschen auf dieser Erde lebten, sind wir einfach mehr oder weniger gelaufen und der Sonne gefolgt. Und Wir waren dann oder haben dann gegessen, wenn wir was gefunden haben und oder hungrig waren und nicht, weil uns jemand sagt, du musst dreimal am Tag essen, ne, oder du musst frühstücken, Mittagessen und Abendessen und so weiter. Und Dr. Brian Clement fastet schon seit vielen Jahren, seit Jahrzehnten einmal am Tag und seit 10 Jahren auch zweimal am Tag. Und ihm geht es sehr gut. Er isst sogar auch meistens nur eine Mahlzeit am Tag und die besteht natürlich hauptsächlich aus Sprossen, grünen Säften. Er trinkt sehr viel, hauptsächlich hier auch wieder Juices, also vor allem grüne Säfte. Ne, der grüne Saft ist legendär aus dem Hippocrates Center, ja. Sonnenblumensprossen, Erbsensprossen, Gurke und Sellerie, it's the legend, really. Ich mag ihn wirklich sehr und darüber kann man sich halt wirklich eben auch ernähren. Ne? Und so last question, Mister. Do you think, I mean, it's obvious that we don't, that we cannot or should not proceed like we did the last years and last centuries when it comes to uh, nature, pollution, to nowadays we have more war than ever in the world. We have a lot of angry, anxious, and all of that stuff still. So I think there is a correlation between how we eat, how we live, and that these things happen. So I mean, the other side, the other strong side is like living like the old yogis, right? So eat
Yes.
nothing, do meditation all time long, and so on. And this is also not the solution. So
No.
in your opinion, what could be a really good solution when somebody would like to go his path to a really peaceful, happy, successful, healthy, long life?
Well, let me try to explain this in a way that everyone will understand. Your brain has 3 layers. And the original layer goes back 500 million years ago, 500 million years ago. That was a reptilian brain. And that developed because we needed to breathe, we needed to procreate, make love, so we have a continuation of our species. It also taught me to protect myself. If somebody was attacking me, I'd either fight or run. And so that brain was there a long time ago. And then the second layer, which came relatively recently, comparative, was the limbic brain. And that's where we developed compassion and empathy, and we started to feel. So the mother now protected her offspring. The father protected his flock, his family. But the most important only came about 1.5 million years ago. That's the neocortex. Now remember, it's not like 3 separate brains. Each layer interacted well with the other layer. And the neocortex is foresight, hindsight, and insight. So let's explain that. Foresight is, I've done that before, so I'm not going to do it again. Hindsight is, I've done that before and it hasn't worked. I'm not going to do it again. But insight is extrasensory perception. This is consciousness. Now, the way I see it, after doing my work for 54 years and working with 300,000 people, is about 90% of the population to 95 is a reptilian brain. So you say there's much war. Now, it appears there's much war today than before. There's not. It's just, it's in our face. You're having a war go on next to you in Europe, in a time we would perceive ourselves as civil human beings. You have people being killed, tens of thousands of people. That's because reptiles control the power. Reptiles control governments. Reptiles control food industry. Reptiles eat reptiles. Reptiles produce pharmaceutical drugs because it's a very low consciousness. It's like an animal that's fighting for survival. So they don't get their head above the water. They're always below the water. They're always dying. They're always suffering. And they see the world through that view. And there's very little empathy. Women have a little more empathy, but sadly, in our mentally sick cultures in Germany and here, women have got to act like men to get respect. We don't allow women to be women. You know, I want women to be women. I don't want more men. We have enough men. Look at the mess we've made. So, you know, very few people are empathetic, but very, 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 very few people have insight where they actually are seeing these things. So what we have got to do is, by taking away slaughtering of animals, by taking away that alone, the next step of having violence against fellow humans is much more difficult. That's why you don't see as much murder and rape in countries that eat plant-based diets or close to plant-based diets. If you go to Argentina, you go to Australia, you go to the United States, you go to Germany, there's much more violence than there are in plant-based cultures. Now, this is not an opinion. This is science data I'm giving you at this point. The other thing is, they did a study here a long time ago in a very odd state that you wouldn't suspect this, in Georgia, which is not known as a conscious state until recently, by the way. They actually took men that were going to be released from jail within 5 years and put them on vegan diets. And this goes back 30 years ago. And the attrition rate, that means how many guys came back to jail, was over 80%. Do you know what it was when they put them on diets? And not all of them maintained it. It's just for 5 years in the jail cell, they could only eat plant-based diets. And I'm sure they weren't perfect. I'm sure they weren't organic, and I'm sure they weren't, you know, fresh. Was only 8% that went back. So over 80% went back to jail, only 8% because it changed out of the reptile hatred and fear and darkness and evil and to awareness. So when these men were released from jail, they saw the world in a different way, a more loving, a more peaceful way. But if you don't even realize, I didn't realize when I ate meat, I was creating violence, but you're participating in that. So if you are working at that level of unconsciousness, well, that's why the world's unconscious today. But I have a lot of hope. I don't think that the world's in the worst place it's been. I think it's in the best place it's ever been. That we have more of an opportunity than we've ever had. I see it here. I see the change in people's attitude, the change in people's ideas. And I believe we're getting closer and closer. Remember, the numbers are clear that the data-driven statisticians tell us it doesn't take 51% of the population to change humanity. It takes 17.5% to 18%. I believe we're around 14.5% to 15%. We're getting to the critical mass where, remember, the justice, it's going to tip like this. It's like this now. It seems like it's like, but it's going to tip one day like this. And we have the technologies to clean up the planet. It's not we have to have them. We have them. And when the economists looked at this, the progressive, intelligent, kind economists, they said, if we just change the economy to clean up the mess we've made, it would triple. So we'd have 3 times more money by cleaning up the mess we've made. But the problem is the reptiles that control the food industry, the governments, and the pharmaceuticals and the war industry, that's an industry. They want war. They make billions and trillions of dollars on war. They're in control. But we have to say what I said about 30 minutes ago. Nay, no, we don't do it anymore. We just refuse to do it. And if enough of us do it, they've got to walk away.
Very well said, my friend. So thank you so much. If you would like, or if you have to, just you can leave the room. I will do the translation. If you can stay, just stay. So thank you so much in this. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you interviewed all the time. And it's really true what you said. And I'm really glad that you are here with all you guys and with your beautiful Anna Maria. So, thanks to you and all the blessings, right?
Danke.
Existiert und entstanden ist, um natürlich auch unsere ganzen, ja, dass wir atmen können, ne? Dass wir all die Dinge tun können, die wir zum Überleben brauchen. Dann gibt es das Limbic Brain, das uns dazu ermächtigt, dass wir fühlen können, dass wir Mitgefühl haben, dass wir auch auf unsere Sippe aufpassen und so weiter. Und dann gibt es den Neokortex, das Frontalgehirn, das allerneueste ist, seit 1,5 Millionen Jahren. Und das erlaubt uns, dann natürlich eben auch ja, über dem Tierreich zu stehen, nenne ich es jetzt meinen eigenen Worten. Und das hat 3 Bereiche, ne? Foresight, Hindsight und Insight, sagt er. Und das Letzte, das sind die wenigsten, das ist nämlich pures Bewusstsein, Consciousness. Und äh, was wir aber leider sind und was 95% oder viele Menschen auf der Welt immer noch sind hauptsächlich im Reptiliengehirn, wo Angst hervorherrscht, wo auch Gewalt hervorherrscht, wo wenig Mitgefühl hervorherrscht. Und wo wir hin dürfen, ist natürlich mehr in diese Mitte hinein. Und er sagt, wir sind nah am Tipping Point, wo wir jetzt eben dahin kommen können, dass eben, es braucht keine 50% der Menschen, die ins Mitgefühl gehen, die mehr raus aus der Angst gehen, sondern es braucht nur, er sagt 17,5 bis 18% der Menschen und er sagt, dass wir schon bei 14 bis 15% sind. Und wenn diese kritische Masse erreicht ist, dann kann ein wirklicher Change passieren. Und das wünsche ich mir natürlich für uns alle. Und das Einzige, was wir dafür tun müssen, ist Nein zu sagen zu den vielen Dingen, zu den vielen nicht so tollen Dingen auf dieser Welt, die uns immer wieder angedreht werden wollen. Nein zu sagen zu Fleisch, weil da tun wir natürlich eben auch mördern, da tun wir eben auch nichts Gutes für unsere anderen Lebewesen. Und Ja zu sagen zum Leben, Ja zu sagen zu der Ernährung, die er gerade aufgelegt hat und vieles mehr. In diesem Sinne freue ich mich, dass du bis zum Ende geblieben bist. Ein wunderbares Interview, ich finde das. Thank you. Leite das Interview gerne weiter. Stay healthy, stay vegan, eat your broccoli. Christian Wenzel, out from Hippocrates Center.
Ich hoffe, dir hat die heutige Episode gefallen. Um ja nicht die neuesten News und Trends rund um Gesundheit, vegane Ernährung und Fitness zu verpassen, schalte jeden Donnerstag und Sonntag ein. Es warten spannende Solo-Episoden und Interviews auf dich. Abonniere uns auch auf iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast oder einem anderen Anbieter deiner Wahl und lass gerne eine Bewertung da. Die zugehörigen Links findest du in den Shownotes. Teile den Podcast auch gerne mit deinen Liebsten, damit auch sie zukünftig ihrer Gesundheit wieder mehr Beachtung schenken. Vielen lieben Dank und einen wunderschönen Tag wünscht dir das ganze Vegan Athletes und Mr. Broccoli Team. Aber Achtung, als kleiner Reminder, die Inhalte dienen lediglich rein informativen Zwecken und ersetzen keinen Arztbesuch. Solltest du körperliche Leiden haben oder an einer ernsten Krankheit leiden, wende dich bitte immer an einen Arzt.